All right, getting a little historical on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns. Two programs have a chance to do something that has not been done since the 80s. The first one, can Texas have three first-round picks in the NFL draft since 1980 or for the first time since 1980? We discuss on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis, your host. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, once again brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So in the first segment, right, Texas is eyeing the opportunity to have three first-round picks in the NFL draft for the first time since 1980. Texas has a real possibility to do that this year. In the second segment, the women's basketball team, they were a 1 seed last year, looking really good, in a really good position to be a 1 seed this year, which would be the first time this Texas women's basketball team earned back-to-back 1 seeds since the 80s. Right, so we discussed that. And then in the last segment, Tashard choices moved on to the Detroit Lions, but Steve Sarkisian has identified his new running back coach, Chad Scott. All right, Chad Scott. That sounds like somebody off The Office. Chad Scott from West Virginia, right? He is our new running backs coach. So we discussed that. All of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I've always said I have like a witness protection name, Jonathan Davis. Like that's a name they just slap on you. You know what I'm saying? And witness protection. Chad Scott might take the case. Take the cake, I mean. Chad Scott. Sounds like a witness protection name, but he's also our running back coach. So let me chill. All right. So in the first segment, it's funny, and we're making such a turnaround now, with Steve Sarkisian and this program, and we're finally getting to the point to where Texas should be. Because, you look around the NFL and you see, it's littered with talent from Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, schools like that. And then for the longest, I don't even know if I should mention him on the podcast, you know what I'm saying? But we were talking about, we got Justin Tucker, right? And now you're really starting to see the infiltration of, NFL players from Texas, right? Because of the success that Steve Sarkisian has had. So it's just always funny around this NFL draft time when you're constantly hearing this can be done for the first time since. This can be done for the first time since, right? And, when you look at this current statistic, 3 first-round picks for the first time since 1980, there's only 32 players taken in the first round. And in 1980, there weren't even 32 players taken in the first round, I guess, because there weren't 30. I don't believe there were 32 teams in 1980. So I guess it was more of a feat then. But, there's only 32 players taken in the first round. So even though we've seen it a bunch from Alabama and Georgia, maybe either other schools, we might see it this year from Ohio State, Clemson, probably. It's not necessarily something that is easy to do, right? Even on some of the best teams, for basically 10% of the first round to come from Texas, that is a tough feat to accomplish. Right. And maybe that's the reason that it hasn't happened since 1980, regardless of what type of program Texas was or the lack of success they had the last 10 years. Right. That's just something that's hard to do, period. To say that you have 3 of the best 32 players going into the NFL draft, or at least viewed by NFL executives, 10% of the first round, essentially, that's a tough feat to accomplish. But the Texas Longhorns have a chance to do it this year, and I think that they will. And if they don't, I don't think it has anything to do with our players, right? I think it's a misread on the part of the NFL executives, right? So when you look at it, I think we can all probably surmise that Kelvin Banks is a lock to go in the first round, right? I mean, you're talking about somebody who, was a 5-star out of the Houston area, came into the University of Texas from day one, where we had a huge hole at left tackle. There was no opportunity for him to sit a year and develop or get ready, like Brandon Baker, at right tackle, or even Trevor Gooseby, who's, Kelvin Banks' incumbent. He had to step right in at one of the most important positions in football at left tackle for a Texas football team that was expecting to turn the tide, right? Coming off of a 5-7 season, you put him in there, slapped him in there at left tackle, one of the most important positions on the field, and asked him to be a vital part from his very first start as a true freshman into the turnaround of this Texas program. And that's exactly what he did. From the moment he stepped on the field, I believe it was against ULM, because that would have been Quinn Ewers' first start as well. He looked like an absolute dog. And we remember, as Texas fans, in that second game against Alabama, where it's like, oh, you're going against Will Anderson. Oh, you're going against Dallas Turner. I ain't really feel him in that game. You know what I'm saying? I think Will Anderson did end up blocking a field goal, and we lost by 1 point. So Will Anderson, I guess, did have a big impact in that regard. But, these just uber talented pass rushers that were just supposed to, be in Quinn Ewers' lap all day, they weren't. And a big reason for that was Kelvin Banks. And then just over the last 3 seasons, we've seen what he's been able to do as a pass blocker. It's just exceptional. One of the best players to ever come through the University of Texas. And, they talk about how he can be more dominant as a run blocker. I think you could say that about a lot of left tackles. You get paid to be, a pass blocker. That's what they focus on. But he has all the tools in the world to do it, right? And so we look at him, and he may not be the first tackle taken. Like I said, I've seen a lot of Will Campbell out of LSU. But we know for a fact that Kelvin Banks is going to be some NFL team's franchise left tackle for the next 10 to 15 years. He absolutely will be a first-round pick. So that's one check right there. The next two are kind of debatable. I feel like they should be first-rounders. A lot of big boards and mocks have them poised as first-rounders. But, it could be late first round, early second round, right? These are the two that could go either way, right? The next one is Jahdae Barron. You're talking about the Thorpe Award winner this year, the best DB in college football. Yes, Travis Hunter, the best DB in college football. Jahdae Barron, somebody who largely played in the nickel and the star role up until this season, came back, wanted to win a championship with Texas, but more importantly for himself, well, I don't know which one was more important, but, he wanted to prove that he could play on the outside. And you're talking about somebody who probably would have came out in the draft last year and been a 3rd to 5th round pick. Now he's going to be a first round pick. I mean, I don't think he'll make it to pick 40. Even if he somehow goes in the top of the second round, he won't make it to pick 40, right? And you're talking about a guy who can play all 5 DB spots, right? I believe free safety, strong safety, nickel, either outside corner spot. And he showed the ability to do that and did it at a high level this year. 5 interceptions, did not allow a touchdown, over a 90 PFF grade for the entire season. He was absolutely dominant in the DB spot for the Texas Longhorns, who had a historical pass defense this year. Regardless of who they played, they had a historical pass defense. One of the biggest reasons for that was Jahdae Barron. And not only his play on the field, but just his demeanor, his leadership, what he would bring to a team as well. He could ultimately be the leader in the secondary. But he just reminds me a lot of a Jalen Ramsey, right? He's not a super prospect like Jalen Ramsey, because Jalen Ramsey was faster than you, bigger than you, stronger than you, and could cover out of this world and could play all 5 DB spots as well. But just what they bring to the corner position is unusual, right? Because, like I said, you're talking about somebody who can play all 5 spots, who can blitz, who will come down and tackle, right? They play the run like safeties, but they're corners. Like I said, he's not the overall prospect that Jalen Ramsey is, but I think he brings that type of versatility to a defense where he's not just a corner that'll go out there and shut down his man. He will literally do anything on the defensive side of the ball that you need him to do, right? And like I said, it's just you don't often see corners like Jahdae Barron that get that physical in the run game, like that have that type of demeanor about them at the corner position, and Jahdae Barron does. So I think it would be a mistake for 32 teams to pass on him, right? I think that's just the type of player that you win games with in the secondary. And, hopefully somebody's smart enough to see that in the first round and get him for that extra year on that rookie contract. That's huge. You know what I mean? And then Matthew Golden, right? Somebody who I don't think anybody, expected to be in first round talks when he came to the University of Texas. He was supposed to be Robin to Isaiah Bond's Batman, right? And because of injury and, just him developing that rapport and chemistry with Quinn Ewers, he ended up being the number one. And I thought that, kind of Mina Kimes the other day, she posted him on Twitter and summed it up perfectly. Like, his tape, he's just a fun watch. Everything that you would desire in the wide receiver position, Matthew Golden was able to put on display this year, right? Where a lot of people looked at him as, a kick returner and a punt returner at the University of Houston that can make plays at wide receiver. He showed that he has the potential to be a really good wide receiver in the National Football League. I mean, strong hands. We saw that multiple times this year. Tough red zone catches, one-handed catches, right? Just making tough grabs from Quinn Ewers this season, right? Body control, the ability to go up and make plays, the route running, being able to get open, against man or zone. And then, the tough big time catches in big time games against Georgia. Although he didn't make the touchdown catch, he went for 186 yards or something like that, 168 in the conference championship game. Obviously, the, 4th and 13 to save our season against Arizona State. Matthew Golden just made so many tough plays this year, but on the tape, you know what I mean? He just shows everything that you would want from a productive wide receiver in the National Football League. So, there really isn't a standout receiver in this draft. I think McMillan is probably the one, maybe, but even then, he might slip out of the top 10 from Arizona. But then outside of that, you got like Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State, and I think Matthew Golden is right there in that conversation. Maybe it's the third or fourth wide receiver drafted, and in a passing league, you would expect at least 3 or 4 wide receivers to go in the first round. So I think Matthew Golden has a good shot. Whether it's at the end of the first round, maybe early second. But I do think that Texas has a great opportunity to put 3 players in the first round for the first time since 1980, Jahdae Barron, Matthew Golden, and Kelvin Banks. And Alfred Collins could be a wild card, right? I mean, that's a player at the defensive tackle position that's very intriguing to NFL teams. I mean, somebody that could end up, if he reaches his potential, being like a Chris Jones type, somebody that's just freakish athletic at that DT spot, maybe even a Jalen Carter. Somebody that's just freakish athletic at that defensive tackle spot and can absolutely wreck games. Maybe somebody grabs him in the first round. You never know. But like I said, Texas has a good chance to have 3 players drafted in the first round for the first time since 1980. I was born in 1993. It's crazy. All right. Quick word from our sponsors, and then we get into the Texas women's basketball team, right? They have a chance to do something that hasn't been done since the 80s as well. We discuss. All right, today's episode of Locked On Longhorns brought to you by Return On You. Attention Longhorn fans, the future of college sports is here and it's transparent. Before the Return On You app, NIL negotiations often happen under the table, and fans didn't have a clear way to directly support the athletes they love. Now with Roy or Return On You, you get to be a part of the change and support the Texas athletes in the most transparent way possible. The NIL app, Return On You or Roy, allows you to choose the player you want to support, decide how much to contribute, receive exclusive content from the athletes you back. The best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. It's a risk-free way to show your support. The Return On You app is giving fans control, no more uncertainty. Now you can provide transparent, impactful support and help shape the team and the future of college sports with your contributions. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Texas athletes the way they deserve, with transparency, trust, and a real impact. This is the future of college sports. So join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. All right. So first thing, before I start talking about the Texas women's basketball team and heaping praise on them, what is up with this schedule, bro? Like, as a fan and as a content creator, we got Texas beating Kentucky in men's basketball. Then they don't play for a whole week. Like, I know that there's going to be, the Spurs are going to be playing twice in the Moody Center starting tonight and then another game. But I mean, damn, they can't play on the road. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we big win over Kentucky, and then we don't play for 7 days, the men's basketball team. Then the women, I guess they did have 3 games in 7 days, so maybe it balances out. But they beat South Carolina on a Sunday. They beat Kentucky in the middle of the week. They beat LSU on a Sunday, and then they don't play till the following Monday. So they get 8 days off. Or 7, I guess, depending on how you look at it. But it's like, damn, bro. As college basketball fans, we have to watch both our teams not play for a week. As the host of Locked On Longhorns, we have to watch both of our teams not play for a week. What am I supposed to talk about? Then we're canceling the baseball game on Tuesday night. Like, come on, man, y'all killing me. Like I said it before, I'm gonna have to just start getting on here and talk about my personal life. You know what I'm saying? Like, but y'all don't want that. But damn, what am I supposed to talk about? No football, no basketball, no baseball. Somebody in the comments is gonna say softball or somebody, could talk about the softball team. You're right, I can. I'm sorry. So yeah, we look at this women's basketball team, and I just kind of illustrated what kind of run they've been on over the last week. Absolutely phenomenal hoops. Vic Schaefer, man. Vic Schaefer. Just talk about getting a hire right. We talked about that with Steve Sarkisian in the last segment, but just talking about getting a hire right. I mean, what Vic Schaefer's brought to this Texas program, absolutely unbelievable. For this team to be in the championship conversation, for us as fans to be able to sit there and watch our team beat a South Carolina, who is the new UConn of college basketball, right? To watch our team beat a LSU, and not only beat a LSU, but come back from double digit down to do it, showing that Texas fight, to watch our team beat 3 top 10 teams in 7 days. I mean, just absolutely phenomenal. That we get to experience this as Texas basketball fans. And then a player like Madison Booker, who's going to be here 2 more years. This isn't a one and done NBA situation. Like, Madison Booker is going to be here 2 more years, along with a bunch of other very talented players on this basketball team, man. So, and you're still in contention for the number 1 overall player in the country. I don't think she's committed yet, Aaliyah Chavez. So, yeah, man, like it's just a blessing to watch. And so you look at this Texas basketball team, and I believe last Sunday they did the kind of first NCAA tournament reveal. If the season ended today, this is where Texas and some other teams would be seeded, right? And they have Texas as the number 3 overall seed, but they would be a 1 seed in the Birmingham region, right? And so I believe the seeds, the 4 seeds, the top 4 seeds were UCLA was the number 1 seed, USC was 2, Texas was number 3, and then Notre Dame was number 4. And then obviously Notre Dame is one of the teams that beat Texas earlier this year, and then South Carolina, and then Texas came back and beat them, right? And so, when you look at it, Texas was the number 1 seed last year, but ended up not making it to the Final Four. They were upset by NC State. And this year, they have an opportunity to be a number 1 seed as well, right? And that has not been done at the University of Texas. Let me find it. Hold on. Since the 80s, but I'm going to give you the exact year, right? Since the 80s, they have not been the number 1 seed 2 years in a row since 1985, right? The Texas Longhorns women's basketball team were a number 1 seed for 4 straight seasons from 1984 and 1988. They also won a championship in 1986, going 34-0 that season. But yes, they have not done it in back-to-back years since 84 and 85. And you would expect, like I said, that this Texas basketball team is a number 1 seed, right? Going to be this year, because based on their resume that they've put forth just now after beating South Carolina and LSU, they look like a number 1 seed. And then when you look at the teams that they have left on their schedule, they have Georgia, Mississippi State, and Florida, and then playing in the SEC tournament. So unless they just fell absolutely flat on their face in the SEC tournament, and I'm still not even sure that would matter, but let's just say they lost in the first round, and I don't think that they will, Texas is poised to be a number 1 seed in back-to-back seasons, right? And I think this year, obviously anything can happen in a winner-go-home scenario. We've seen a lot of crazy things happen in these tournaments. The women's tournament is more chalk, than the men's. Like the men's, you're liable to see, Kentucky lose to St. Peter's in the first round and things like that. Women's is more chalk. Like usually the number 1 seeds get to the Final Four pretty close, right? There's not as many upsets in that tournament. But yeah, I expect this women's team to get to the Final Four and be competing for a championship this year, just the way that they play, right? Having Rory Harmon back, this team just looks different. Hopefully they can get Aaliyah Moore back. That'd be a huge boost as well. But yes, just like I think that, Texas is poised to have 3 first-round picks for the first time since 1980. I think that this women's basketball team under Vic Schaefer can secure a number 1 seed for two consecutive seasons, and that would be the first time it happened since 1984 and 1985. So just amazing things being done on the 40 acres by the football program, by the basketball program. Like I said, doing things that haven't been done since the 80s, and a huge shout out to CDC for making these hires, right? Turning these athletic programs up. And it's just such a blessing that we get to root for these teams, because women's basketball, football, they're doing the damn thing right now for sure, man. I'm so proud of those women and can't wait to watch them again on Monday. I hate I had to wait so damn long, you know what I'm saying? But can't wait to watch them again on Monday and, hopefully continue their journey the rest of the season to, hoisting the national championship trophy at the end. Quick word from our sponsors, and Texas has identified a running back coach, Chad Scott. So we discussed Chad Scott after the break. All right, so Texas has hired Chad Scott, the running back coach from West Virginia. He was actually the offensive coordinator as well. The last couple of years, he was offensive coordinator and interim head coach when they let go of Neil Brown. And now he's the running back coach at the University of Texas. So really good experience there. And, when you look at it, let's see, obviously Tashard Choice, is somebody who, like I said, was larger than life, felt like more of a running back coach. And so Chad Scott is going to have to come in and fill those shoes. I think when you look at the running backs, I think running backs are always going to produce at the University of Texas, especially what we're building with this offensive line and the passing game we're going to have. And I think running backs are always going to have, be able to produce under Steve Sarkisian, right? There's a very lengthy history of that. So I'm not necessarily worried about Chad Scott coming in and being the difference between whether our running backs produce or not, right? I think the biggest thing with him is recruiting. Can he walk into a mother's living room, a grandmother's living room, a father's living room, and convince them that the University of Texas is the best place for their son, that he is the best coach to get their son to the National Football League, right? And a lot of that recruiting is going to be done by itself. You walk in with that Texas logo on your apparel, that does half the job for you, but you still need these kids to believe in Chad Scott. And I think that's going to be the key, right? Can he get these young men, not just in the state of Texas? I mean, Tashard Choice went to Florida to get Cedric Baxter. So can he get these young men to buy into letting Chad Scott coach their son and hopefully develop him to get into the National Football League? But, Steve Sarkisian trusts him, and so I trust him as well, right? And I think, Inside Texas ran a story just talking about like some of the players he worked with at West Virginia, and there's no like just huge like Tashard Choice, like, oh, he worked with Jahmyr Gibbs, right? There's none that just pop out at you like that. But some Texas fans may remember the name C.J. Donaldson, may not, but he came to West Virginia in 2022 as a true freshman, as a 3-star tight end. Right, I had forgot he came as a tight end, so I was reading Inside Texas story. I just remember the player. But he came to West Virginia as a 3-star tight end in 2022. And they immediately flipped him to running back. And I remember going into that game again, even though we ended up beating them super bad. Like Hudson Card was starting. I remember Xavier Worthy threw a touchdown pass in that game. Like we absolutely blitzed them after losing to Texas Tech. But I remember coming into that game, like talking with Texas Homer about it, just reading his, watching his breakdown of the game, that they had a 2-headed monster at running back. But C.J. Donaldson, the true freshman that had converted from tight end, he was a dog. Like, you know what I mean? Like as a true freshman, he came on the scene, just 100-yard games. I think they played the backyard brawl the first game that year, and he came out maybe 100 yards against Pitt. But he looked really, really good. Like from the moment he stepped on the field, just looked different at the running back position. And then he had 4 carries for 9 yards against Texas. Right? So this player we were super worried about didn't do anything against Texas. He had 4 carries for 9 yards. So if you don't remember him in 2022, I absolutely understand. Then he had a really bad injury that year. And then the last 2 seasons, he split carries with another running back and the quarterback. So his numbers don't look just off the charts, like 700 yards and 10-plus touchdowns. But he is a really, really good player. And now he's transferred to Ohio State. So it's funny how these things always come back around, right? Because now he's going to be at Ohio State. We're going to play against C.J. Donaldson again. And his first game at Ohio State will be against the coach that coached him his 3 years at West Virginia in Chad Scott. But I think he's going to have more than 4 carries for 9 yards, right? CJ Donaldson is really good. That is an NFL running back. And at Ohio State this year, he's going to be one of the best running backs in the country. So I said all that to say that I'm not sure what Chad Scott's tenure will look like at the University of Texas. But I do know that he turned a 3-star tight end into one of the best running backs in the country in CJ Donaldson. That is his Roshan Johnson story, right? And because of that, I have faith in what he'll be able to do with even more talent at the University of Texas. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hook 'em. Peace.